Okay, we're close, but what else testing-wise, hurdle-wise, needs to be cleared before we can feel almost assured that Usman and Masvidal is going to happen in Abu Dhabi?
We're real close now, Zubin. I mean, the route that we took to get here was up and down, and you didn't want to get your hopes up too early, but it's time to get your hopes up a little bit. I mean, these guys, they do need to pass one more COVID test after the official weigh-in on Friday, but they have already passed multiple tests at this point. They passed a test before they got on the plane here in Las Vegas. Then when they landed in Abu Dhabi, they took another test. They were quarantined within the quarantine. I mean, they're in a safe zone. They're in that quarantine bubble, but they quarantined in their hotel rooms until they passed. Again, those results came back. They were negative. So now they just need to cut weight, make weight, pass one more test, and we are good for UFC 251 on Fight Island.
One more question here about Usman. He's got a new opponent. He's going to have to fight him on short notice. What kind of challenges does that present for him?
Yeah, I think a lot of people would look at this and say, hey, this is an easier fight for Kamaru Usman, right? I mean, he was fighting a guy in Gilbert Burns who had a full camp, who had already won 2 fights earlier this year. Now he's getting Jorge Masvidal, who has not fought this year and is only taking this fight on 6 days' notice. But I got to tell you, man, when I look back on some of the most infamous fights on short notice in UFC history, Nate Diaz came in and beat Conor McGregor on 11 days' notice the first time they fought. Michael Bisping won a UFC middleweight championship on 17 days' notice against Luke Rockhold, who had already beaten him prior to that fight. And I think a lot of that has to do with mental. Kamaru Usman came in, at least he knew exactly what he was dealing with Gilbert Burns. But now he's got a guy who sucks all the air out of the room, and Jorge Masvidal, who's a big star, is getting a lot of attention, and Jorge Masvidal is coming into this thing loose. So while I do think I'm picking Kamaru Usman in this fight, Jorge Masvidal is a very live dog here.
Interesting. So there is some precedent. Last thing on Masvidal and the weight loss. There's losing 5 pounds. There's trying to trim a couple pounds if you're you and me. But tell me about the weight loss this guy's had to undergo in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, well, that's always a big eyebrow-raising thing, right? Is when everybody who listens to Masvidal talk say that he's going to lose 20 pounds over the course of 6 days. That sounds crazy, and it is crazy. But I would also tell you that it's not completely unprecedented. In fact, it's not even all that rare for guys in the UFC to cut. That's about a little over 10% of his body weight if he's cutting down from 190 pounds. That happens all the time in the UFC. These guys cut a lot of weight. Now, the difference here is that he's traveling a lot. And then, like I mentioned earlier, he's going to be in his hotel room, quarantining for a good amount of time. So it is a little bit of a different cut. But I think Masvidal is going to make weight. My question is, how is that going to impact him on the night of the fight? I think he's going to be fine, but it is something to monitor for sure.
Coverage on Saturday begins on Fight Pass, prelims on ESPN at 8 Eastern, main card 10 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Plus pay-per-view. Brett with us on SportsCenter at night after it's done in the United Arab Emirates. Brett, thanks.